Good day to all of you. I'm Raymond de Souza from St. Gabriel Communications International. It's an apostolate founded in Western Australia to promote Catholic apologetics. Here in the States, St. Gabriel works together with the Evangelization Office of the National Shrine of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in Pennsylvania. Today we begin a new series in EWTN. We are going to investigate the logical and historical foundations for the belief in the divinity of Jesus Christ. We will find out by a logical analysis of a number of facts and information provided to us by history whether or not it makes sense to believe that that young Jewish carpenter who lived near 2,000 years ago in an obscure province of the Roman Empire was actually God in the flesh, or was he merely a prophet or a great prophet of the Hebrew people? All of you, like myself, may be a bit tired these days of hearing about the Da Vinci Code and all the propaganda made about the book and the movie. That orchestrated effort to denigrate Christianity that was launched this year and is going on for months. Da Vinci Code has been seen by most observers as more of a money-making exercise to make billions at the expense of the Christian faith. And nowadays, unfortunately, blasphemy sells. But others, like myself, have seen in Da Vinci Code in a concerted effort to destroy the Christian faith. Unfortunately, we are going through a time of crisis in the Church, which finds a number of Catholics, and even non-Catholics for that matter, who tend to be somewhat gullible and will be, in fact, informed by that movie, by that book, that everything we have learned about Jesus Christ, about the Bible, is actually fake, or at least most things we have learned is actually fake. The ridiculous affirmation that Dan Brown has placed before our eyes in the movie program, in the book, that Mary Magdalene was in fact a wife of Jesus, or that the Emperor Constantine the Great was the one who invented the teaching of the divinity of Jesus, and so many others, are so ridiculously groundless in history and in logic that do not deserve any form of refutation if we did not live in a time of gullibility, of faithlessness. Unfortunately, the enemies of the faith are insolent. And also, unfortunately, the believers in Jesus are also gullible many times. And they are quite prepared to leave aside 2,000 years of apostolic tradition, of sacred scripture, of Christian history, and believe, or at least allow, that movie to cast doubts about their belief. Their attitude proves how Cardinal Ratzinger was right. In that homily that he delivered during the Mass of the conclave that actually elected him Pope, he had this to say, and I quote, "Catholics cannot remain immature in the faith, in a state of inferiority, as they run the risk of being tossed about and carried here and there by any doctrinal wind." And His Eminence at the time emphasized the necessity of a clear faith according to the creed of the Church. In this series of presentations here in EWTN, we would like to make our contribution to this promotion of a clear faith according to the creed of the Church. If the Church had not been in the crisis of faith we see today, Da Vinci Code book and movie would have been a great financial loss for their producers. But again, unfortunately, blasphemy sells, and historical unlies also sell. Historical untruths, also sell. The Da Vinci Code is that easy way of making millions at the expense of the faith. I emphasize this point, to make millions at the expense of the faith. The idea, we see that Mary Magdalene was the spouse of Jesus. Now, anyone knows that the beardless person sitting next to Jesus in Da Vinci's famous painting, The Last Supper, was John the Evangelist, who was a young man in those days, and throughout the Middle Ages has always been portrayed as a beardless young person, young man. But because he has no beard, Dan Brown thought it was a good idea to portray him as a woman, as Mary Magdalene. And actually, we could even be flattered a bit. Who would have imagined that Saint Mary Magdalene and the Emperor Constantine would be this hot these days? Who would have imagined that? Perhaps we can take advantage of this to make a greater promotion of Catholic apologetics, of Catholic history, of the Catholic truth. Dan Brown claims in his book that, and I quote, "Almost everything our fathers taught us about Christ is fake." And the idea is that Constantine the emperor was the one who invented the teaching of the divinity of Jesus Christ. He's talking about the Council of Nicaea that took place in the year 325. The church had just left those days of persecution with his conversion, when he accepted Christianity and made it the official religion of the Roman Empire. Nicaea today is in Turkey. And there was a get-together of the bishops of the area, of the time, to decide on an important doctrinal point. The church was in a crossroads because there was this young man, or a young priest or deacon called Arius from Egypt, who had theological ideas quite different from the tradition of the church until then. He believed that the Catholic Church had got it wrong in saying that Jesus Christ was actually God incarnate. And in his theology, if you wish, he could not reconcile himself with the idea that Jesus Christ would share the same nature with God the Father. Jesus was undoubtedly a great prophet, a great saint, but not God incarnate. In essence, that was the doctrine of Arius. His followers, called the Arians, have been revived in the 1800s by the Jehovah's Witnesses, who deny Christ's divinity, and also through the Mohammedans. Islam also denies the divinity of Jesus Christ. In the Da Vinci Code, Brown adopts Arius as his representative for all the pre-Nicene Christianity. What he fails to acknowledge is the fact that it was exactly the opposite. Throughout the first 3 centuries of Christianity, all Christians, all true Christians, believed in the divinity of Jesus Christ. It was Arius that changed that, or attempted to change it, and it became very powerful in his time. The basic idea that Constantine the Great had actually manipulated a council of the church, Nicaea, and commissioned and bankrolled a whole staff of people to reorganize the Bible, doctor the text of sacred scripture to suit his preferences, that Jesus was not divine, is simply laughable. It's simply ridiculous in historical terms. The fact is that Constantine called the council to settle a dispute between the Arians and the traditional Christians. And because for him, who was a new emperor, he wanted to keep his empire in peace. Now here is an important point. Constantine was more in favor of the view of Arius than of the traditional Christians. He was Arian in pectore. And if he had had his way, he would have Arianism winning the day. But he respected the view of the bishops, of the Christian bishops of the time, who defined the teaching of the traditional Christianity against Arius. In the book of Da Vinci Code, in the movie, the famous painter Leonardo da Vinci is presented as the man in a conspiracy to preserve the truth, and he implanted certain codes in his